Toschie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Your time is very much appreciated. Are you well?
I'm good. I'm really good. And you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. You know, different part of the world, but we're getting through things.
Yeah. We are. You're in UK, right?
That's right. Yeah, London, capital city.
London.
It's the place to be. How is everything in the Audrey Horne camp overall? Now, obviously, as well, that the new album, Devil's Bell, is out there. And are you happy with the reactions you've seen and read about it so far?
I'm just amazing. We had so many good reviews. Like, I've hardly read one that wasn't amazing, like brilliant. And like for the people that, you know, follow our music, also, you know, the response has been like so good. Like, so many people saying so many great things about this album, and people seem to sort of think that this is one of my best albums, which is always, you know, when you release an album, you always kind of, the one thing you're always afraid of as a musician is, you know, sort of reaching your peak and then sliding downwards without noticing that you are. And, you know, you don't want to be the band that people talks about, yeah, you know, they should have quit while they were ahead, you know. So it's, you know, when you get this kind of feedback, then and you go like, whew, and you're really, really happy. Of course, as you know, I'm really proud of this album. I think it's definitely one of our strongest albums up to now. And so, you know, I think that I'm not so far out there that I wouldn't notice, because, you know, I listen to this album and I'm like, yeah, this is one of our best albums. So if everyone else hated it, I would be surprised. But, you know, a lot of musicians has been surprised, so you never know.
Now, the combination of you loving it and everybody else loving it, that makes it a near perfect release in that regards.
It does, absolutely.
Did you feel any kind of pressure with Devil's Bell, particularly as it coming off the back of the very much beloved Blackout album too, and of course the general expectation that comes from the fan base with Audrey Horne?
There's always sort of we're sort of very lucky, because we're a band that's been around for 20 years. We've released a number of albums, and we have been able to do this on our own terms the entire time. We have never compromised anything. Like, every album we have released has been, we make an album, we hand it over to our record label, and they say thank you. Never any, you need to do this or that, this album needs to include some of this or that. It's never like that. They've always, like, we just talk to them and say, we're going to write a new album, and they're like, cool. And to be honest, we don't even let them in on the process. We don't send them stuff like, yeah, this is what we're working on. We just make an album, send it to them. So I think having that in mind, there's always a pressure that we put on ourselves. You know, you feel like, I hope, you know, is this going to be a vital album? Is this, do we still, you know, have it? Are people going to be disappointed? There's always sort of these thoughts, but in general, we just sit down and make an album that we want to make. You know, you try to make an album, which I guess most artists do, but you sit down and make an album that you would go out and buy and get excited about yourself, you know. Our albums are our legacy, so you sort of have to be able to look back at them with pride and not going like, yeah, you know, you don't want to be the band that goes like, yeah, that album, well, our record label and our management kind of forced us into doing this or that, and that album should never have been released. You know, we're never gonna have to say something like that. So, but there's always a certain pressure in terms of what we put on ourselves, you know. But in general, we just try to enjoy making an album.
Well, of course, you're an artist, so I think it'd be more shocking if you hadn't kind of put personal pressure on yourselves to constantly be improving, constantly trying to step up from where Audrey Horne were last time.
Absolutely. And on this album, sort of what we, because every time we make an album, we talk about it in advance, you know, whether that being on tour or at rehearsals or in the pub for that matter. You know, you always, you talk about, yeah, on this next album, we should do something this or that. And you always have sort of grand ideas that you end up nowhere near when you sort of actually sit down and write the album. But on this album, we wanted to do something that was a bit heavier. Everyone was sort of agreed on that. Let's make a bit heavier album. And we sort of wanted to explore the instrumental parts on the songs more in terms of, instead of, yeah, let's put in a guitar solo there. We said, okay, what is our strength?
Yeah.
Between our thing and our focus on writing good melodies, right? Just basically writing a good song, not just like, here's a very heavy riff, just scream something on top of that and make it sound cool, you know. We've always sort of been kind of looking at the Beatles, to put it that way, and go like, we should write good songs. We need to write good songs, you know. Not that I'm comparing us to the Beatles by any means, but that has always been sort of one of our strengths, and well, at least to the people that listen to our music, what they tell us, you know. And also the guitar parts between Alvin and Thomas, who has been playing together in this band for 20 years now, so they've kind of grown into each other, and even though they can argue and disagree, and they're quite different, actually, very, very different as musicians, but together they sort of, something happens when they play together. So we wanted to explore that a bit more. So that was sort of we tried to aim for making something that was taking us a step further in one direction at least. So, and I think we did well on that, and we enjoyed that a lot. I think what was most fun to do on this album was actually the parts where you go, well, do we have to go back to the chorus? Can we just go in one total different direction, you know? And sort of go like, well, does this instrumental part need to end here? If it feels like it should go on for a longer time, then let's go on for a longer period, you know. And these things were actually a lot of fun to do, you know. So and like for me as a singer, it was I kind of, a lot of it is just to write good melody lines and try to sing it as well as possible. But on this album, there were parts where I sort of had to go a bit out of my comfort zone and do things in a way that I don't normally do, which was kind of forced upon me from the other guys, because they were, especially on a song called what is that song called? It's called All Is Lost. On that, because Albert wrote sort of the music, well, and he sent it to me, and he said, could you write some vocals for this one and some lyrics? And I did, and I sent it back, and he was like, nah. I was like, okay, you didn't like it? He was like, no, I didn't like it. Okay, cool, I can come up with something else. And I kept coming up with stuff, kept sending it to him, and I kept being rejected by him. He was kind of always like, no. So can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Because your image froze for a second. Now, and he kept sending it, and after a while, I just had to call him and like, dude, what do you want from me? I don't think I can come up with better melody lines than I've done here. I've sort of used like every ammunition I have in my guns here, basically. And he said, well, maybe that's a problem. Maybe you're sort of trying to make melodies too much. Try to be a storyteller. Try to be something else, you know. And as soon as he said that, it sort of clicked in my head. I was like, sure. And then I sort of had to do things in a way that I don't normally do, which led me to write lyrics in a way that I don't normally do. And to me, that was sort of, when I sort of had done that, I was finished, then I was kind of like, that was cool. It was intense because it was frustrating a lot of the time in the process. But, you know, when you sort of have a final result, you kind of start to sort of enjoy the torment that you go through on your way there, basically.
Yeah, I mean, all the detail you just shared there, it's obviously no surprise to hear it come from your mouth, particularly listening to the album, the darker lyrical content, the harder and heavier edge that comes through a lot of the time. But that mind frame, so, you know, you talk about being effectively forced into it, and from that, the frustrations and the experience. But what, you know, getting into that mind frame, was that the biggest struggle? And was it then easy for you to kind of come back out of that and go, right, no, I'm going to do some melodic stuff here and stuff like that?
I think no, it was sort of easy to go back to doing things sort of my normal way, but in general, the lyrics on this album is a lot darker than they have been on our, at least our 3-4 albums before this. And so a lot of people have asked me, was that the pandemic, you know, and the state of the world, you know? There's a war in Europe that was not on when I wrote these lyrics anyway, but you know, and I just had to say, no, to be honest, I don't think so. Maybe subconsciously a lot of that stuff creeps into your head, but I've always sort of thought of my lyrics in the sense that I'm not educating people. I'm not trying to be a great storyteller. I'm not Bob Dylan. I'm not of that caliber at all. And I'm not sort of speaking. Sometimes there's a slight political message in there, I guess, but that's not what I'm doing. Basically, is like, if you leave your house, you dress up in a certain way. If you're going to a party, you dress up in one way. If you're going to work, you dress up in one way. If you're going to a funeral, you dress up in one way. And sort of that's how I write lyrics. I write lyrics to dress up the music that we make, you know. So the music was a bit heavier and it was a bit darker. Well, at least on a number of the tracks on this album. So to me, it just kind of came natural. You know, I didn't sit down and say, "Oh, this needs to have darker lyrics." I just started writing lyrics, and the way I write lyrics is a bit in the sense that I write sort of the melodies, and while doing that, I just black talk. I sing just whatever comes to my mind. You know, it's not even words a lot of the time. I just sing, and very often some words or some sentences sort of sticks, and they come back. Like next time I try to sing on it, I keep repeating that, and a lot of the times those words or sentences sort of are my starting point, you know, because then I have something there which is sort of my starting point. Yeah, best way to explain it. And I read, funny enough, David Lynch, not because you know, being a band named after a character from one of his from his TV show, you would think that we are like die-hard David Lynch fan, and we're not. You know, we have a lot of respect for his work, and we love his movies, but that's not the reason why Audrey Horne just came up. But anyway, I read an interview with him where he said that he sort of, when he made movies, when he wrote the script for movies, he used sort of his dreams as a starting point. He said, and he said, as an example, because he works a lot with his subconscious, and he said that when he did, what was the name of that movie, Blue Velvet, he had a dream about a girl with very strong red lipstick. And so he sort of said, when I wrote that, I had one image. I needed a girl with like strong red lipstick. And out of that, he sort of, then the idea of something else was born, and blah, 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 and so on. And I realized that's sort of how I write lyrics too. I just use something that, not something that comes to me in a dream, but something that comes during this process of writing melody lines. So, Devil's Bell, the title track is a good example, because I kept singing Devil's Bell, and to be honest, I didn't know what is Devil's Bell, you know. So I had to Google it to find out what is this. But when I found then I found some references to some poems, and I started reading them, and then out of that, sort of the whole lyric was born. And I have no idea what I'm talking. I don't remember your question. I'm just rambling here, man.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic to listen to you speak in such detail as well, and the comparisons you make. That interview with David Lynch, it's something I've read that as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's incredibly interesting, and it makes so much sense, particularly if you've listened to your music over the past 20 years and followed along with the depth that Audrey Horne has always produced from the albums. It is going to be a surprise, I think, to a lot of people to learn that the album isn't necessarily influenced on face value by the last few years, because there's almost an expectation that it would be because of what's gone on the last few years. Has the last few years had a big effect on Audrey Horne overall, or have you guys coped?
Well, we have coped in different ways, I would say. I think it has been tougher for some of the members, because it's sort of like, personally for me, I had a daughter a couple of months before the pandemic hit, so I've had so much time at home with her, so much more time than I would have if the world was normal, and I got to take a step back, and I work as an artist by drawing and tattooing as well. So, and kind of in my everyday life, it's been, tattooing and making music. And so during the pandemic, I've drawn so much stuff that is not for a tattoo or for a t-shirt designed for another band or artwork for someone. I just been drawing stuff that's been in my head, and I got to spend a lot of time with my daughter. And so to me personally, it was actually really good. But as a band, of course, it's in many ways quite shite, the whole thing. But and then say Ove, he produced this album, so he said, because we talked about it's probably going to be a bit hard to work with a producer from another country, blah, blah, blah. So, and then he sort of raised his hand and said, here's an idea, I'll produce it. And we were like, yeah, not so sure about that. But not because he's not good, but because he's too close, basically. We were like, we need an outsider. We need someone who shakes us up and says, really? Is that your best idea? And someone who says, how come you take that small part there? Why isn't that sort of the main part of the song? And stuff like that, which is what a producer is there for, to sort of not just to make it sound good, but to sort of shake the foundations of the band and sort of make you sort of widen your horizons and think different thoughts, basically. So, but then we were like, okay, why not? Let's give it a go. And I'm so happy we did, because he did an amazing job. He was so fucking good during this, like as a as a psychologist as well, because, you know, with the whole pandemic, some band members were a bit more frustrated with stuff, and he was so good. He was like, you know what we're going to do now is, you know, let's forget about all of that. What we're going to do now is this, and blah blah blah. So he was extremely good, and I think he found a lot of satisfaction in doing that too. And also he made an album with he made sort of a pandemic band with two mates, and made a band called Drott. I don't know if you heard.
I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, and what they do is, it sounds like a soundtrack to a weird movie. It's instrumental. It's really, really good, but it's weird. And he also has worked a lot as producing and writing music with another Norwegian artist. So he went all like, there's nothing else for me to do. I can just work my ass off, basically. And then some band members were kind of just wanted to go on tour. So they were kind of, and couldn't go to the pub, and, you know, life just became a bit too boring, basically. So I think we handle it a bit differently, but all in all, I would say for us, it was, because we've been doing this for 20 years now. And even though we're not, you know, we're not Iron Maiden or well, Iron Maiden are not a band full-time either, I guess. But, you know, bands that do this every day, you wake up and you work on your music, and then you go to bed, and then you wake up again. You know, we do this not full-time in that sense, but it's an ongoing process the whole time, and it's been for 20 years.
Yeah. So
being forced to take a break was really good for us, I guess. And I think also with like the material that Thomas and Ave especially wrote on this album, I think it was kind of good for them to just be at home and sort of, because normally we go to our rehearsal studio, right, and we write as a band, and you know, so, and then when you make music like in that way, then it's sort of, it's the energy and it's the kick you get out of it, and but you know, when you sit alone at home and write music, you sort of switch gear in a way, and you, I think they dive way deeper into their own material this time, and as did I, you know. So in many ways, the whole pandemic thing was good for us, because we sort of rebooted a bit, and yeah. So but you know, the whole pandemic thing is kind of, I have a lot of friends in the music business and in other businesses as well, and it's the same. I talk to some and they are just like, I've been doing so much, I've been so creative, I've got so much shit done, and I've been able to make a lot of money out of what I'm doing, even though it's been, the society has been shut down. And then you talk to some other guys that are like, yeah, I had to bankrupt my company, and you know, so it hits people in totally different ways, you know. So
yeah,
I noticed that I'm, you know, when people ask me, is that, what do you, how was your life during the pandemic? I sort of, I'm not, how was it for you? Because I don't want to be the guy like, actually it was fantastic in many ways. And then they're like, yeah, I went bankrupt. Yeah, it was shit. Yeah, me too. I didn't like it at all, you know. So
no, I completely get that. Almost a guilt complex in regards to it, because ultimately, university negative period. But we always ask every band we interview over the past couple of years, we've asked the same general question about the pandemic, about the coping mechanisms and stuff like that, purely because we want to try and pull out positive stories that did come from such a terrible time, that continues to still be a terrible time now. Is any small positive, and you've told us some credible ones here, is this worth celebrating?
Yeah, I think so too. And you know, of course, I honestly, I think there's going to come loads of really, really good albums out of this, because I think a lot of artists sort of got the chance to sort of slow down and say, let's just concentrate on making art. There's not much else I can do anyway, you know. So I think there's going to come a lot of really, really good albums out of this. Already a lot of amazing album has come out, you know, that have been written and recorded during this time. But that's the way it is, you know. You know, in tragic times, in difficult times, art is sort of always been very important, you know, whether that being, you know, during war times or whatever. Art is, because you need, when things go to shit, you need something that sort of let you ventilate, let you escape, you know, whatever it is, you know. And I think so I think there's going to be a lot of really, really good music and art in general that's going to come out of this, because let's face it, it was 2 fucking horrible years in many, many ways, and a lot of people have struggled, like, not just with work and stuff, but with their minds, basically. You know, if it's people who didn't have a huge social network, stuff like that, you know, and being isolated for so long, and you know, that's tough as fuck. So I'm lucky. I have a family I could spend my time with, and I have, you know, my bandmates. You know, we got together like 2 and 2, because it was a long period where you could only hang out with so many outside your own household and stuff. So we got together, like, you know, me and Thomas got together and wrote music together, and me and Arvid did, but we sort of didn't get the whole band thing until basically towards the end. So we also recorded this. Normally we record live. We go in band, we box in all the stuff like amplifiers and shit, and then we just play until we have a take that's good, you know, and then we sort of fix stuff and we do overdubs and stuff like that. But this time around, we sort of, our drummer went into studio and then, you know, I got a call and said, yeah, the drums are finished, and then our bass player went, and so we didn't get to sort of hang out as a band, all of us, the whole time, because that's how we normally do it. You know, you go into studio as a band and you stay there, and then you leave when you're done, you know. Which sort of, to us, was like, I was sort of afraid that we talked a lot about, especially me and Thomas were like, you know, we need the band spirit, you know. How can we make a good album if we lose that, sort of? But Arvid was good. Like I said, he was like, don't think about it, because we're a band. We write music, we record it, even though we're not necessarily all together all the time. This is a product of the 5 of us, you know. So and looking back at it, I think it was good for us to sort of having to reboot and do things a different way, because then you have a different point of view and you have a different angle, and you focus on things that you normally don't focus much on, and so on. So you lose sort of that live energy thing in a way, but at the same time, when I listen to the album, I'm like, it doesn't sound less energetic than our previous ones. So I don't know, maybe, I don't know.
No, I think you kind of nailed that there. I think it's very important people to know, regardless of all the differences that you had to go through to get to this release, it is very much an Audrey Horne album, very recognizable, but also fresh, interesting, reinvigorating. And I want to ask you about 2 specific tracks, if you don't mind. And I'm going to start this first one with mentioning the simple fact that we've talked a little bit about your vocals and what you did there, but your vocals are immense on this album, which makes it odd. I'm about to ask you about the track that doesn't actually feature your vocals. And I'm talking about Return to Grave Valley, purely because I'm wondering about the plan behind this track. E.g., was it a simple, this was always going to be an instrumental, or did you find lyrics didn't fit?
No, it was actually like in a way, a bit of both, because I got a video on my phone. Like Alvin and Thomas sent me, one of them, I don't remember, one of them sent me a video of in the studio, our studio. They were just playing sort of the first sort of part of that song, and they didn't write anything. They just sent me that video, and I looked at it and listened to what they were playing, and I was like, shit, this is cool.
Yeah.
And I texted them back, is like, you're in studio. What is that? That sounds fucking amazing. And then Albert called me and said, yeah, we were thinking, maybe can you try to come up with some vocal ideas for this? If not, maybe this could be an instrumental piece. We've never done that before. That could be interesting. You know, it might not fit on an album, but you know, if you can come up with some vocals, then that sort of even cooler. And I listened to what they were playing. I just told them, like, you know what, I'm not gonna fuck up this by adding my vocals. I said, seriously, it sounds so good and you play it so well. And that was not like something they recorded. It's just a video of them two playing in studio, just sitting there with two amplifiers and playing it. So I said, write it as an instrumental, please. And you know, and so they did, and I'm so happy they did that, because I think it's a really cool piece of music. And it's sort of, because instrumental tracks on albums, very often there are some like really amazing stuff out there, of course, but a lot of, you know, if you listen to an album, there's an instrumental part, you kind of you listen to it and then you like skip, because it tends to be a lot of guitar solos and yeah. But when I listened to it, I was like, dude, this is like 10 songs in one song. You know, like every time you sort of get used to something, it changes, something new, and then it changes again and changes again. So and when we sort of made the track list for the album, I was like, this has to be on the album. It's so good. It needs to be there, and everyone sort of agreed on that yeah, it would be cool. And it was sort of in our whole sort of, like I said, we wanted to make a heavier album and focus a bit more on the instrumental part. So it kind of made sense that one track was purely instrumental. And of course it has a strong Iron Maiden vibe, which of course we know. We never sit down and try to let's write something that sounds like Iron Maiden, you know, but we all grew up listening to Iron Maiden. That's probably one of the few bands that we all five sort of agree on this being a major influence on our life as a musician. And also Alva and Thomas, back in around 2000-ish, I think it was, they did a tour with Paul Di'Anno. They were the backing band of Paul Di'Anno, actually our bass player as well.
Yep.
But it was a different drummer. So they kind of have that whole Iron Maiden thing in their fingers. So of course, most people listen to that track or some of our other stuff, that because we wear our influences on our sleeves. We never try to hide that we're influenced by some of the greatest bands on this planet, but we never try to copy them. We just, we write music and it's inspired by them, and we happen to be inspired by some bands that have a very unique sound. So it's kind of like, it's like if you're very inspired by Alice in Chains, it's gonna if you're very inspired by a band like down, I would say, then maybe you wouldn't necessarily say that, yeah, it's clear they inspired them, because they sort of have a sound that a lot of bands have, that stoner metal thing, you know. I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just saying that Iron Maiden sort of has this unique sound that they were pioneers in their genre, and so it's, of course, it's easy. But my point is this, that most people say that this is a cool thing, you know. Every now and then, you know, you get a review where it said that, you know, the Maiden influence is too obvious, you know, which is fair. If you think of it like that, then yes, it is pretty obvious, you know. But but this song was, it just felt natural to put it on this album, I think.
Yeah, it is an awesome instrumental. I think it's really worth highlighting that. But I also really don't want to like gloss over the simple fact that your vocals are brilliant. And I think of certain tracks like Dance, Macabre. But the other one I really want to highlight is From Darkness, which is, of course, the finale of the album, where if someone asked me to describe it in one word, I'd probably say something like grand. This is a unique Audrey Horne track.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think that was actually one of the first songs we wrote for it, and we like I said with All Is Lost. I wrote. I can't remember how many versions I wrote, and it was like, took forever till we sort of got to the point where this is what this song needs. But when Abba sent me, he sent me like, I've written a song here. I've written some music here. Can you listen to it? And he sent it to me. And every now and then there's a song where I just start singing. And like the song starts, and you're like halfway through first verse, I start singing stuff, and I just know what I'm gonna sing. So I wrote that, like the melody is there, came really, really fast. And I just recorded it at home, sent it back to Abba, and he was just like, absolutely perfect. This is this is what it needs, you know. So that was the opposite. That it just sort of came, and there are, like, on each album there is one or two tracks where basically they give me music, and it's like I've already written the music, you know, if you know what I mean. I just know what I need to sing this. And we worked, but when we recorded it, we worked with quite a lot, because it's very like, it's very like floating, the vocal. So Abba was like, when I was recording the vocals, Abba was like, he was like, you need to be the drummer in AC/DC, basically. You need to be like, how back on the beat can you possibly come before falling off, basically. So, and we had a lot of fun doing that, because I sort of, the songs I enjoy singing most are the songs where I sort of become a character in a way, which is always fun, because you sort of, I imagine it's like being an actor and be able to be a person that you're not, you know. And that's sort of how I can sort of visualize a character and try to be this character. And when we did Blackout, I remember Kato, the guy who produced it, he was like every time we started on a new track, he was like, who are you on this track? Who are you? And he always started with sort of a conversation around, okay, listen to the lyrics, listen to the music. Who are you? You know, he said, you can't be on this song. You can't be satisfied in any way. You know, this is not a character who is satisfied with anything. You know, so you need to sort of take everything that you're satisfied with yourself and take that away. You know, and become this. So, but on From Darkness, I think to me, that's a very precious song, because we wrote that and I recorded the vocals, and then you have sort of a bridge where I to be honest, I can't remember the lyric or the melody on it right now, but there's a bridge part where I repeat, sort of, I have 4 sentences and then I repeat them, and I recorded them, and we were happy with it. Producer Alba was happy, and the guy who mixed it, he was also happy. And I came back and I was like, you know, I want to give it one more shot. I want to do something else here. And I sang it in a different way. And when I did that, it was like, thank God I did this, because then sort of that was how it was supposed to be. And also one other thing about it was that the ending, because we made so many different endings to that song, but it was like, whatever we did, it was kind of like, what we always felt was that the first part of the song is better than the last part of the song, and we can't really finish a song weaker than we started it, you know. It has to be at least as strong. And then he said, you know, I've written something, but I've just gone like off the cliff, and I have no idea where I'm going with this, but could you listen to it? And I listened to it, and I was like, that's the whole, basically that's what's there now, the whole like more progressive part that ends the song. And I was just, this is beautiful, and this is the way to close an album, not by sort of the end, but like, yeah, and they were all in love and everyone was lived happily ever after, or the bad guy died, you know. Let's just end it like it was the movie Vanilla Sky or something, you know. Let's end it where you go like, where did he go, you know? That song, I might be a bit too poetic and romantic around the whole thing now, but I have a very romantic sort of relationship to music, and to me that sort of is like, it's like the band just goes off somewhere and go like, where are they going? Why aren't they coming back? What happened to the chorus, man? You know. So I think that song, and also the lyric, fits with sort of the wavy. I think the vocals are kind of like very, I see it as very waves in a way, and the lyrics are, you know, I have tendency to sing about the sea.
Yeah.
I've always sort of been, I've never been a sailor, but I imagine that I would love to be a sailor, because, and also I think I have a very sort of a romantic viewing on that whole sailor lifestyle and all of that. And also I think like a ship on an ocean is a very good image on us as humans on this planet. You know, you can't really jump off. You have to coexist with the other people on the ship. So to me, it's sort of a good image on society and how we need to sort of get our shit together and start to coexist in a better way, and which we clearly are not very good at.
Clearly.
Being war in Europe and everything, but no. So I From Darkness to me is, if you're familiar with our previous work, I think to me this album is sort of the link between the self-titled one and Youngblood, because it has sort of the hard rock energy thing of Youngblood, but it also has a lot more of the atmospheric parts of our self-titled album. And the self-titled album closes with a track called Godspeed, and to me, From Darkness is Godspeed Part 2 in a way, because the lyrics, when I wrote the lyrics, I sort of intentionally tried to sort of write something that was sort of a version 2 of the lyrics on Godspeed, because I don't know, it was just something when I heard the music, it sort of felt very wave-ish in a way. So, and a lot of people have commented that the vocals are like very Ozzy Osbourne-ish.
Okay.
It has a lot to do with the fact that his vocals is very like me. He's very melody based. He's always been really good at writing extremely nice melody lines. He was like a huge Beatles fan. He is a huge Beatles fan. So he's always been very melody based in his vocals, on top of something that's very based on rhythms, basically. And also I don't have a great range as a singer. I can't really hit the high notes of Rob Halfon or Bruce Dickinson and a lot of the people that, you know, I admire as singers. So I have like a smaller range, which also is something that I have in common with Ozzy Osbourne. So we have some things that makes it natural to sort of see a link between us as singers. Not that I'm comparing myself to Ozzy Osbourne by any means, but we have sort of, his range is a bit narrow in the way that mine is, and he's always been very melody focused. Basically, his vocals are very pop music vocals in many ways, you know. So but I love, like, From Darkness is definitely my favorite track on this album, and I love the opening track and the closing track. So so if the rest wasn't up to it, then it would be a good 7-inch, you know.
Yeah, I like to think
Fun.
of that explanation and that the detail you've gone into there. Right, we passed the 45-minute mark, and I feel like we could probably be here for another hour just chatting forward, but I've got one more for you, and it's pretty straightforward. You've talked about it a few times throughout, but it is 20 years of Audrey Horne, which is an incredible achievement in itself. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What does it feel like? 20 years, do you feel it?
I feel it. Yeah, I do. You know, we're older. We're kind of, as musicians and as humans, of course, our priorities has changed. You know, with families, with basically life. Things that were important 20 years ago are not that important these days. You know, we used to want to be rock stars. Now we're like, we want to be a good band, basically. But I think in general, I think, like you said, being a band for 20 years is an achievement, because it's kind of like being married for 20 years is an achievement, because most bands don't last that long, you know. And also, like I said in the beginning, you know, the fact that we've been able to keep our integrity and to be able to do things the way we want to do it, and at the end of the day, you know, Audrey Horne is going to be history, and what we've done in 20 years is sort of to collect experiences and also to be able to look back at our catalog and what we've done on record and what we've done as a live band, and all the people I got to know. You know, I know so many amazing people, like musicians, producers, journalists, promoters, music lovers in general, you know, and to be able to look back on that and say, this has been a fucking great trip, man. You know, that is something I'm extremely glad that I'm able to do, you know. And we'll see, you know, like every album we make, we always go like, this might be our last album, so it better be fucking good, you know, because you never know, it might be our last album. Things happen, you know.
Of course, things happen, as you say, you never actually know, but all you can say is, here's hopefully to another 20, right?
Yeah. hopefully to another 20.
40 years down the line, we'll come back to this. Toschie, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure talking to you, man. It was great fun. What's that? What's your T-shirt, by the way?
Oh, Dream Troll. It's a British classic heavy metal band, actually in the vein of things like Iron Maiden and stuff like that.
Dream Troll. I will check it out.
Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?